ready to go. Thank you so much, and welcome to the December 16th Finance and Capital Management Committee of the Akron Public School Board. We have the following members present: Diana Autry, Derek Hall, Valerie McKittrick, Patrick Bravo, and Superintendent David James. And we're also joined for the fun part of our agenda. We're joined by Aaron Markovic, and thank you, Aaron, for being here. And we put this on the agenda just to recognize Aaron and the district's accomplishments. So I'm going to share my screen and get on to a little bit of a presentation, so to speak. All right, does everybody see the award? All right. Yes. Okay, so beautiful. I'll give a little bit of background, and then I'd like for Aaron to introduce the project. But it's been a little bit more than a year ago, and I'm sure that President Bravo remembers that we were looking at new 5-year forecasting software, and we have very intensive softwares to disaggregate data, maybe so financial and academic and discipline and you name it, right? And we employ people to do that. We just disaggregation of data to turn into useful tools all over the organization takes place in districts around the state of Ohio. Well, we were at a conference in Chicago, Aaron and I and a couple other folks, and we said, wouldn't it be great if a year from now we were back here? Well, that's all I had to say about the matter, and Aaron is back here representing the fruits of those labors. And here's the letter. It says, thank you for the support and investment you and your team have made to your school district and your community using data analytics. With your leadership and commitment to database decision-making, you've helped provide the environment and opportunities for students to flourish. Forecast 5 was happy to recognize these endeavors with a Project of the Year award in 2020. As a company that thrives on innovation and growth, Forecast 5 is energized by any use of analytics that saves monies, creates efficiencies, and improves opportunities and the outcomes for students and community. And enclosed in your package is a $500 donation, and we are so very thankful for that. Thankful for Aaron and the work to turn that around in a year, but really humbled by the $500 donation that we will turn into a scholarship for graduating senior this year, and work with the secondary team to do that. So on the screen with you tonight is Aaron Markovic. He's the manager of testing and assessment, and he submitted this proposal to Forecast 5. What you may or may not know about Aaron is he is an absolute whiz when it comes to data and data analytics. I've got to know Aaron over the past couple of years, and it's amazing what he's able to take the Forecast 5 tool and do. So welcome, Aaron. Thank you so very much. And if you could give the board finance committee just a little bit of the highlights of what this award was all about, I think they would find some use to it. So thank you.
Sure, definitely. First of all, I want to point out that, Ryan, when we were at the conference, we had 2 goals. Our first goal was to, what if 1 year from the conference we were back presenting? Like, and that would be a huge goal.
Right.
And then our BHAG was, what if we were nominated for Project of the Year? So not only did we present at the conference, we won Project of the Year. So that's pretty amazing to go from learning a new product to being leaders within that product.
Yeah.
So what this project entailed is fascinating. We use Google Classroom, like a lot of other districts across the country, but there's no real way to track what students are doing in Google Classroom other than teachers tracking that information themselves. So we reached out to Forecast 5 along with Howard's team to give them secure access to that information that's being exchanged, and put it into a format, into a dashboard that allows principals and district leaders to identify students that maybe are underutilizing Google Classroom, maybe having some difficulty with completing assignments. And then that allows us to reach out directly to those students, to those families, to provide those supports. And so we're literally in the country among some of the first to be able to have those capabilities. So it was a huge breakthrough. And when we presented this at the virtual conference, a lot of other districts are reaching out to us to figure out, how can they put in place that type of technology.
Aaron, I did not tell you, and I haven't mentioned this to David yet either, but I received a phone call from the CEO, Michael English, for the entire corporation, saying how impressed he was with this. So it was, so I don't know, Mrs. McKittrick-Val, if that qualifies, but that's pretty fun to me when we're able to do that turnaround on that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you joining, Aaron.
Sure, absolutely. It's my honor. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
all
Fantastic.
right. Now on to, thanks again, Aaron. Take care. Now on
Thank you. Good work.
Now on to the rest of our agenda. Right, we need to be grounded in some numbers and legislation and all those
That's fun stuff.
all that fun stuff, right? So we do have a pretty big agenda tonight. Not so much numbers, but we do have a big legislative agenda, and it is timely since we're in lame duck session and heading into the first of the year. So whether it be your own leadership considerations and committee considerations that we're going to talk about, but definitely the 133rd General Assembly, which is a wild and crazy time, let's call it. So included in your board packet on the administrative content, and I would like some feedback about this. I will share my screen again, but I know the committee members had asked for some kind of legislative tracking tool. And I wanted to share this with you, get your thoughts about this in conjunction with OASBO, BASA, and OSBA. We have this advocacy report that I'm able to pull and highlight and include. It may be too much volume. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it quite yet. I did just upload it to the website recently. But there was a request, it may have even been from you, Dr. Hall, about, hey, I want to know more about what's going on and affecting the schools. Like what's the one-stop shop we can go to for both finance and academic? And so this is what we were able to do. I think David would recognize this. This is what we send out in form and fashion in different parts to the different organizations. So this is kind of the collection all in one stop. If you click on the hyperlink, we're going to look at a couple of these. It'll take you right to the Ohio legislature. And this is a great one-stop shop for the board to get summary committee notes, fiscal notes, and if you see my cursor, documents, status, votes, committee history. This is really powerful, I believe. So looking for a little bit of feedback. Yes, no, indifferent, pare it back a little bit.
Yeah, Ryan. I mean, I think listen, I mean, I would always err on the side of being overly detailed. If folks, for whatever reason, are limited in their time and or ability, to be able to sort of process it, you can always skim it, right? I mean, you can kind of skim through the parts that are pertinent, but it's always nice to have access to the entire story, for the topics where you want to dig in a bit more. But that's just, again, that's feedback.
So as we progress through 2021, at least monthly, Maybe a little bit slow at the start for the 134th General Assembly, but at least monthly, I'll start including this in our Finance Committee meetings, attaching it to our fiscal reports. And if there's something that you want to pull out and study, obviously we'll make it available to the entire board, and we'll be more informed.
Mm-hmm. So Ryan, this is Diana. I think is very, very helpful. I actually was able to look at it a little bit beforehand.
Okay, great.
And it is a lot of volume to that. But for the purposes of the board, I think it's important that we do have access so that we can, look at the entire story when we need to. My question was, so is this something that can be tailored as well just for the community, for our website, or is this just for the purposes of our committee and for the board?
I believe we can post this to the website. These are all public domain kind of issues, right? So I've highlighted just simply in yellow to start. Now maybe we can reprioritize the list a little bit, but if the general public wants to know what legislation is currently affecting our school district, we can post this right on our website, in the finance, under the superintendent's page, however we want to, and they can go get these hyperlinks. I know that superintendents, treasurers, and board members around the state of Ohio are using these hyperlinks in this kind of format almost daily right now during lame duck. So yes, I like that.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention as well, at Akron Children's on our employee website, we have a section that's called the Legislative Action Center that any employee can click on. And it's similar to what you just shared with us, although it's more, I guess, at a level where the average person can understand it. But then you can also click right on something that takes you directly to your representative to advocate on behalf of whatever our positions might be. And it kind of goes back to what I've been referring to for the last couple of meetings about mobilizing our families to help us with certain things. And I don't want to come across as being angry or combative, but we should want to have some influence, utilize our influence that we have to make certain things happen. So, but yeah, Akron Children's Hospital has it. They make it very simple and easy. And it's like a pre-written letter. If you agree on it, you can just, send it directly to your representative on behalf of whatever the issue is, but also just keeping us informed on issues that are coming to the table.
I do like that. I like the sample letter idea. Certainly we don't do that on every piece of legislation. That might be a board resolution here or there, superintendent treasurer letter, as you're going to hear later in our meeting. But definitely when we get to the Fair School Funding Plan next year,
absolutely.
I'm liking that. We may even want to have our own dedicated web page to this. Remember, we had the advocacy and transparency site with ClearGov. Maybe we add to that. So I'll look at that, bring it back to committee, and make some recommendations.
Okay.
Like that. All right, moving on. Under our legislative overview, the Fair School Funding Plan. I gave a little bit of an update, and I won't get all into the details, but there's a couple different avenues. I'll talk about what's next. Really, I won't give you the whole history again, but let's talk about what's next in the Fair School Funding Plan. And we have a few different avenues. We have standalone legislation that can be introduced in the House. Now, there's some rumors out there, but they're rumors just at this point. But I think it's some rumor that I'd like to spread, is that the House could use the momentum that was created for that historic vote and take up House Bill 1, the first legislative action from the House in the 134th General Assembly. We would all welcome that, and that would be really nice and symbolic. Second avenue or companion avenue would be another co-sponsored bill in the Senate. Thankfully, Senator Sykes is going to be in that seat again, and hopefully on Finance Committee, assuming so. So we could have another companion bill to raise the level of awareness and excitement and energy around the Fair School Funding Plan right off the bat, right? I mean, if this is my rumor and I'm controlling it, I'd say let's go for January. Why not, right? And then the third option, which is a likely option just from where we are in a new General Assembly in a biennium budget, is the governor's new budget will be due to the House in February. So let me restate that again. The governor's budget in the process, and in my general understanding of it, is the governor will deliver a budget to the House. The House has a lot of time. If of both sides of the House, they have the most time. And so they could embed components of the Fair School Funding Plan in the House side of the budget to send on to the Senate, have conference committee, and be successful on those components. So maybe a combination of all three of those so that we have leverage. But so the headwinds to that in the next step, the headwinds to that are the budget process during a global pandemic is going to be competing interest from every agency that you could ever imagine, right? It's the entire state of Ohio budget. So there's going to be so many competing issues. That's why we've advocated so hard for it in 2020 is get the framework, get the roadmap in law. And then as revenues become available, since it was a 6-year phase-in, we recognize the way to do that. Now it's going to have a lot of competing interest, but I can assure you hope is not lost. So those are the next steps with it. There's not a strategic plan. We're all taking a break and going to breathe a little bit until the new General Assembly gets seated, and then start to develop a plan. I know that the bill sponsors have expressed an interest to get together virtually in January. So I'm thankful to them for that. Any questions on the Fair School Funding Plan? All right, moving on. So there are a number of lame duck session issues that have potential impact. The most recent was Monday night at about 5:15, right before the board meeting. An amendment was adopted to House Bill 442, specifically calling for the elimination of a treasurer's license and business manager license in Ohio. Now, those are the ones that caught my attention, but in the report, which I'll bring up on the screen here, called Opening Doors, Occupational Licensing Reform in Ohio after Senate Bill 255. So at 5:15, this was brought to committee, amended into the Transportation and Commerce Committee. You let that one sink in a little bit. The Senate Transportation and Commerce Committee, and scheduled for testimony today at 10 o'clock. So Monday at 5:30, this was introduced, adopted, amended, and there's, by the way, there's hundreds of licenses in here. And if I just do a control find on treasurer in the report, these are the two sentences that were included to eliminate the school treasurer license in the state of Ohio. So from Monday at 5:30 to Tuesday at 10 a.m., they gave the state of Ohio education associations, Ohio Department of Education, Ohio Auditor of States Association, and practitioners like me, as you can imagine, I'm getting excited at this point, to turn in their 24-hour notice of testimony for today at 10 o'clock. Little did they know that I would work all night to provide and prepare that testimony, as well as a number of other individuals. And we did an extremely effective job today, both from the ed associations, from the Ohio Department of Education, and a strongly worded letter both to the General Assembly and to the governor's office about the realities of this and what makes Ohio unique. So I thought it was very interesting, as I really did get the sense that the committee was unaware of the uniqueness in Ohio. So I want to give you a couple high points just so you're aware of this, and then tell you what could happen in the next 24 hours. So Ohio, as you know, or you may not know, is very unique. One of maybe only 5 states that has 2 direct reports, a superintendent and a treasurer. That goes back all the way to 1936 in Ohio. Is when Ohio said we need a system of checks and balances because our Constitution says that this is a shared responsibility between the local and the state. We're always going to have, that's been in our Constitution since like 1852. And the local participation is the partnership of local property taxes. And so the evolution of a school treasurer from fiscal clerk to having a certificate to ultimately having a license that the legislature put in law in 1983, mind you, has been a journey and track since 1936. And so I was able to provide that testimony. If it's not, I think it is listed on your agenda today. It gives a little bit of that testimony, followed up by the Ohio Association of School Business Officials, the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, and as I mentioned, a number of other testimony. The Ohio Education Association testified in opposition of this bill directly after my testimony, and really did a great job in providing the depth of why wouldn't Ohio be proud of raising this standard for fiscal stewardship or paraprofessionals or educational assistants. And so they went through the whole report, and I've listed it here. So what could happen in the next 24 hours is this could go to committee tomorrow morning. I'm going to do some work tonight and engage those committee members as I did today. Senator Sykes is on that committee, as well as Senator Roegner from Hudson in this area is on that committee. And ask them to make amendment to that bill so that it doesn't get passed out of committee, which tomorrow could shape up to be the last day of the 133rd General Assembly. So both houses are going to meet. This could go right from committee being passed right to the floor of the House because it was attached to a House bill. And without conference committee, it could be approved. Now, that doesn't mean the end of fiscal officers in Ohio. That doesn't mean the end of OASBO. It just means that we've lowered the threshold in Ohio. We've lowered some professional requirements. We've already made a call to the governor's office. And I see, I'll pause for questions, but I know Mrs. McKittrick has a question.
Can you explain to me the rationale for lowering the bar?
If you look in that attachment, but that basically came up through Chairman McCauley, and I understand that Senator Wiggum is also a co-sponsor of this. And the caucus, the Republican caucus, has long championed over the past few years, I'll go back to the few years comment, that we're going to remove barriers of entry for work and jobs and inefficiencies. And so they have commissioned this study, even though it was dated in 2019. This originated a few years ago, even in the prior General Assembly, 132nd General Assembly. And so for it to go from multiple years ago to an updated report in December to slipped into a bill on Monday was obviously shocking, but that is all of the explanation that we got. Not that I did receive a question that I answered. Well, Ryan, why is it that a county fiscal officer doesn't have to have a license? I said, well, the answer is grounded in law. The answer is grounded in the fact that in Ohio, you have 2 direct reports. In Ohio, we've said anyone supporting the education of minors has to have a higher level of threshold of background check. And so we've detailed in my testimony, in OASBO's testimony, and again, the Ohio Education Association's testimony, I want to believe that they did hear us, and we were approached by a couple of senators after the meeting, which sometimes doesn't happen unless they truly were inquisitive. So I do believe we have the opportunity to ask for that amendment. But outside of the study, Mrs. McKittrick, I really don't have, what is truly driving that. I believe it's misinformation and misunderstanding. Any other questions on 442?
That's a comment. I mean, it's, to your point, Mr. Penland, there's not a whole lot of rationale and sometimes why we do things. I mean, you could also argue, because as I recall, to be auditor of state, you're not required to be a CPA either. So I know to be the attorney general, you must be an attorney, but to be auditor, you're not required to be CPA. And so I think a lot of lay people are kind of like shocked, like, what? You can be an auditor of state and not have to be a CPA? Are you joking? So yeah, it's just kind of, I love our state. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, further on that, the Auditor State's comment came up today at testimony, and we explain our job in the fiscal officer position in school is sometimes an inch deep and a mile wide. Yeah. And I've mentioned the size and scope of our budget and operations. I mean, I said it's not just accounting, or boards would always require a CPA. We're actually managing and leading healthcare budgets to the tune of $50 million here. And so that level and threshold is, I said to the committee, I said, this is really something that should be revered. We should be proud of this standard that we've created. We have a very high standard in Ohio. We appreciate to talk to you more about it. So that's it on 442. We also have a couple popping up. A couple are listed here. I've provided testimony. You can read House Bill 75, and it is in the Local Government Public Safety and Veterans Affairs Committee. It was attached, and it serves in regards to House Bill 343, House Bill 751, and it's been championed by Representative Marin, who has made an issue out of tax filing complaints, and a good time to educate the board just a little bit. So as you know, and upwards of 30 or more % of our revenue comes from local property taxes, commercial, industrial, and our residential. Well, commercial industrial, as you know, has arm's length sales. These are big businesses, right? And when there's an arm's length sale, usually no problem, no foul. When there is a challenge that goes through the Board of Revision, Ohio's got a long tried and true process, a very stepped through process to say if somebody doesn't agree with their value, they usually get an appraisal. We learned a little bit a couple board meetings ago about some property. So it largely follows that process, very tried and true. As a result, there's been individuals in the General Assembly who brought challenges to how to automatically accept the reduced values upon challenge without a school district's participation. Obviously, we would never go for that. Most school boards would never go for that. And by the way, we never challenge a residential property, just so you know. I mean, we by policy in most districts around the state of Ohio, and it's been in testimony, we don't do that. Now, if there's a $1 million home on Lake Erie and they tear it down and build a new one and they're asking for $150,000 value, we may have something to say about that, but we don't have that property, so to speak. So 98% of the properties in residential around Ohio are not challenged. Commercial industrial, for us to be a party to it, and this is Superintendent James, sometimes there is some rub here. And I think the outcome of these bills, Superintendent James, we want to connect with city leadership. Right. And let them know that these things are coming down the legislative pike, because for a school district to be a party to it, we have to enter that engagement through the Board of Revision. And then, as you can imagine, business owners, small business owners, bigs, corporates, apartment buildings, Walmarts, you name it, their job is to be as efficient as possible and pay as least amount of taxes as possible, or they want to pay their fair share but they want it to be fair and reasonable. We want it to be fair and reasonable too. For us to be a party to that, we have to join in that board of revision process. And sometimes that's where the conflict comes. A couple of these bills that I'm going to post and you can have a chance to read, really we're in the lame duck session, so they just may fly through or be amended even tomorrow, could reduce our revenue. It could reduce the board's standing to participate and be a party to those board of revision complaints. Of course, we don't want to see that reduced. We want it to be a fair and reasonable process so that the board doesn't lose revenue arbitrarily. The reason that these are so sticky right now is because of COVID. Some of the introduced legislation retroactively applies to January of 2020. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit of technical, so I apologize, but the reason that's of issue is normally the board of revision process, you turn your application or your complaint to reduce your value by March 31st. School district, the board has a chance to enter into it, become a party to it, and then it takes effect the following January, right? Remember, tax bills are calendar year, collection years are calendar year, and then they overlap fiscal years. This new process would be retroactive to January, so that a taxpayer, if you file a complaint, you'd say, oh, by the way, this goes back to January. I'm not going to pay that higher value. I'm going to pay the lower value. So the school district immediately starts to lose revenue without any party to that claim. And then here's the part that's really damaging, but it's getting lost in the minutia of the bill because people hadn't stopped to think about it, is this can be renewed for up to 3 years because of COVID, right? So there's something called House Bill 920 that you're a little bit familiar with because it adjusts. It was originally designed to adjust with inflation, but if it's a arbitrarily created inflation based on reduced values, House Bill 920 then redistributes some tax wealth across the whole corporate structure, right? So this is eliminating House Bill 920, so we could not have the opportunity to redistribute some of that taxing leverage across the whole tax base, and upwards of $1 billion. And this could really start to unwind some of the tax revenues that we see. So superintendent, when this gets through, if it gets through any part of it, we'll want to have a conversation with city leadership just to let them know that there are going to be a number of increased complaints. And so we'll just walk them through that. And then in the meantime, board, we'll have to outline what potential financial implications this could be. It really all depends on how many complaints are filed. Any questions on House Bill 75, House Bill 30, Senate Bill 38, or House Bill 751 are those three. That's pretty mind-numbing sometimes when you think about what we could be facing. All right, that's it on legislation. Any other questions on legislation? I really do like the idea of the website, community outreach, and even for a chance to sign on electronically. I like those. Really like those comments.
Well, have you guys heard of the Beehive before? So anybody who criticizes Beyonce and all of her millions of fans.
No.
You never heard of the Beehive? Oh my gosh. So I guess I'm envisioning, not that they need to attack anybody, but if we had even a percentage of our families who are educated on some of these issues. I mean, when you saw the passion that came out regarding sports and whatnot, just imagine if they were educated on some of these issues and could help support us and give another perspective from the parents and families. So
that is a perfect lead into our next discussion, maybe in 3.02 district-wide financial information. And when you and I talked, and Derek and I talked about the 2020 year in review and how we bridge that, make that a goal of ours, is how do we create that advocacy group that's a little bit more timely, responsive, and we're providing tools and education. On to 3.2. This really is for your discussion. I can help facilitate it, but I wanted to make sure with the potential for board committee changes and committee structure changes, and us being virtual and having a number of big issues next year, to include levy, equity dashboard, early preparations for negotiations, committee assignments, superintendent search, the college and career academies and academic programming. Let's just make sure that the work that we had in progress isn't lost on, our next committee. So I don't know, I'll pause there, kind of turn it over to Diana and Derek, and either get you or I can facilitate them one by one. But I've talked a lot already, so.
Well, I mean, I think with respect to committee assignments, I know that that's something that we're going to be sort of working towards as a group. But Ryan, I think I've told you offline, that I had laboring intention of requesting more fun and finance together in the same sentence for 2021. So I know that there's been conversation, regarding would there be additional members on each committee and things like that. So I would think that most of the board members who are on this call will be on multiple committees again next year and attending. But I know that I'm at the very least committed to staying on board with respect to finance. So Ms. Autry, I don't know if you have any comments with respect to that topic.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, surprisingly, I would love to stay. I feel like the fun is just beginning. I was a little intimidated, and I don't know if there's anybody else who's just dying to be on it, but I actually would welcome staying and learning and building upon, what I know. This year went by so fast.
Yes.
And I survived it. So I'm still here. And my brain is still open to learning and absorbing more. So I think continuity would be important, though, which is another reason why I'm willing to stay. I think it's important for continuity's sake.
Sounds like you guys may even be asking for some kind of award, like you get some special treatment for weathering my finance committee meetings. I don't know.
Well, I can't think of something I would like. I want someone to design an emoji for me that's just as sophisticated looking as Miss McKittrick's.
Oh, here it goes.
I like somebody, because I have no idea how to do that. So it may be easy, it may not be, but
fun.
But also too, Ryan, we could also see some other folks joining fun and finance in a more formal fashion. Again, if we end up adding, going from 2 to 4 members, two to four board members on a committee, we'd have some additional folks. So maybe Ms. McKittrick, maybe Mr. Bravo, and others may elect to join us for more fun and finance. So
right. Well, since we're on the subject of further enhancing that under 3.02 number 5.
We got you, Ms. McKittrick. We got you.
Yeah. We're on number 5. They're further enhancing and developing finance committee. And we did talk a little bit offline about this into more formal recommendations. So I want to get some additional thoughts from the board committee. We've talked about large programmatic changes. And so I don't want to put words in mouths, but, I interpreted those conversations as saying, much like our General Assembly or much like our city councils operate, when we're bringing larger and new initiatives, let's make sure that they get properly vetted through multiple committees. Finance being one of the ones that I think the reference was made. Finance kind of touches every area of the organization, and should it not be vetted in more depth when we're talking programmatic changes. And again, I'm going to put words in your mouth and then turn it over to you guys. I don't think it's for every service contract. I don't believe it's for every purchase order. Obviously, we have rules and guidelines and board policies for those. But new and developing programmatic changes, we want to make sure we're just going to have to frame that a little bit better. You know, what does it mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's well said, Ryan. I mean, you know, for example, let's use College and Career Academy, right? I mean, that's a big enough initiative,
Right.
you know, that we should want to spend the requisite time within finance to make sure that we understand, you know, how we're funding it, understanding that, you know, sort of the requisite KPIs from one year to the next, so we can continue to evaluate, are the dollars being well spent? And part of that, you know, I think most folks, I think a lot of people tend to think that finance is about numbers, and it's really not. It's about the accompanying stories more than it is about the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that's where, you know, I've kind of, you know, referenced, I think a few weeks ago, that it might, I think it would be prudent with respect to some topics like college and career, to where we would do a joint meeting, if you will, that might be longer in nature, you know, with instructional policies, you know, since this touches them so closely, you know, to really sort of ensure that the story that's being told there can be combined with the numbers that are being shared out in finance. But to your point, Ryan, yeah, I mean, I don't think that every professional development contract, you know, needs to come to finance, you know, but some of the big ticket items around, you know, around budgets, if you will, I absolutely think should come to finance. And I think that we should be more formal about it as we move forward as well. And that we adopt a process where, hey, it comes to finance, and, you know, and it doesn't leave finance and go to the board at large until finance has had all their questions asked and answered, and then they can make a recommendation, whether it's thumbs up or thumbs down, you know, to the board as a whole, you know, and so those are just sort of my thoughts for how we sort of make this more formal as we move forward. But again, I take your point. You know, we can't boil the ocean, because if we're trying to look at everything, God, I mean, you're never going to get out of meetings. And so,
yeah.
So Ryan, that's where I would really kind of look to you to kind of, you know, put together a list of items that you think would be most appropriate, be most appropriate to be vetted through finance. And so certainly the items that you mentioned already, like college recruitment, I think that's kind of a clear item. But, you know, would love to hear, you know, as we move forward into January, you know, if you could put together a list of items, you know, in consultation with Dr. James as well, about, about the kinds of items you all think make the most sense to come to finance. And then I think we can kind of, you know, figure it out from there. But that's, you know, I guess that's sort of my input on that topic. Ms. Autry, I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me. I think having a few joint meetings with the other committees would be very helpful, you know, just depending on what the agenda is, to kind of, like you said, fill in those blanks that sometimes get lost in between. So I think that would be, you know, very helpful. And again, you know, I sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So you have to be there in order to learn. So I think some joint meetings would be helpful between the committees. And if we expand those committee sizes, you know, that's going to be helpful too.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think part of this too is about being respectful of people's time as well, right? I mean, I don't want Dr. McWilliams-Woods to have to explain it in instructional policy and then come to finance and have to re-explain everything all over again. You know, if we can be a little more efficient with how we use each other's time, you know, I think you know, obviously that there are benefits to that as well. You know, so I know we've got Ms. McKittrick, Mr. Bravo on as well, the board members. You know, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on this as well.
Sorry, I couldn't find my button. No, I agree. I think none of these things is done in isolation, right? And so when you bring them together and you have folks collaborate, everybody's understanding increases, and that's always a good thing. So to have some overlap, I think makes sense.
Mhm. All right. Patrick chimed in here, agreed. He's got chat comments there. All right, well, I've taken some notes during this part, and so as I look toward next year and our committee meeting in January, I think what we'll want to do as it relates to enhancing, developing the committee assignments. Obviously, that will evolve between now, the potential for a special board meeting yet this year, the organizational meeting. And so we'll want to hit stride with that, obviously, early next year. And while we're on that subject, I would like for you to look at 3.02 in the district-wide financial information. I want to put some dates next to these priority lists so that we can start to align it. And let me kind of go from 5 to 1 since we were heading in that arena. So the further enhancing developing finance committee and committee assignments, superintendent and I will work with legal to further define a framework about additional members. I know that's in process already, but even a recommendation schedule, right? And to the questions that were asked about a more formal vote and what are the most appropriate items, not to put ourselves in a box, but what are the most appropriate items to make those kind of recommendations. So if you guys have comments, make sure you stop me because I'm actually not on that screen. I'm looking at the board agenda.
Yeah. Hey, so Ryan, yeah, the only comment I had is to agree with you and say as we get into 2021, I think, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm looking to you to kind of set kind of the timeline.
Right.
Because again, as you know, I mean, this is your full-time job and, board members serve, part-time and at the, pleasure of the community. So, I don't know that we're positioned to try to determine for you, in what order or what dates things ought to be accomplished in. So I think we'll be looking to you to kind of help, I guess sort of herd the cats around some of these topics. So Levy as an example, we know that, we've talked openly about the possibility of having one on the ballot in May. And it's getting ready to be January.
Right.
My thought is, this is the first time that I know several of us on this call would be going through the process of getting ready for a levy. So I would rather err on the side of, trying to bake in more time than less time, because again, there's some catching up and some educating I think is probably going to have to happen with some of us who are new, at least for me anyway. And so I'd rather, so again, looking to you to kind of, just set some of those timelines and milestones. Yeah.
So working backwards again, the committee and committee assignments will make some traction here over break and into January. So definitely within first quarter of next year, if not January and February, we'll probably have some recommendations. I'm sure we will have recommendations on the committee assignments, the recommendations, and the appropriate materials and kind of when to combine those meetings. So I think the likely time to do that is around the organizational meeting. So superintendent and I will work with legal to outline that framework. So I think that satisfies that. The levy, since you mentioned it, I'll need to go back. I don't have at my fingertips right now when the resolution of necessity would need to be, but I do believe that is January. So we may need to call a quick special board meeting to review that, even if there's deliberation still going on, like what we did last year, is pass the resolution of necessity. And then if there's further support, we put the resolution to proceed on and a couple weeks later, or we don't, which pushes it to November. So I will refresh that before the end of the year for the board. The equity dashboard, I think that's lining up nice to the equity policy. Obviously, there's been a lot of work on that as that equity policy becomes more steadfast and adopted by the board, we can look to the framework of that to make sure that this dashboard, or we've even referenced it as how do we filter that through our decision making, both implicit, explicit, outlined by the various headings in the racial equity policy, but what kind of dashboard can we look to in a regular basis? So that for sure, I'd like to put a deadline, looking for the superintendent to make comment too, in the first quarter, right? So once the policy's in place, that'll take a little bit of time, and then we'll have some development, and then we'll have some hearings on, if there's anything else in policy we need to do. So superintendent, I think end of first quarter, calendar quarter, I think is reasonable there. If anybody has any other.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. I think first quarter, we'll put that. And then no hurry on down below in administrative content. Our current investment policy and a Neola investment policy are attached. I'm not going to ask for a deep dive at this point. I will ask for some further discussion in January. Just wanted to get this in front of you, have a chance to look at it. I have always been of the opinion that this is one of the policies that more broad-based guidance from the board is better. And the reason I say it is not that I can go invest in rare coins in foreign stocks or international equities.
How about Bitcoin? You can say
Bitcoin, yeah, I can buy Bitcoins, I can buy gold bullion, and I keep it here in my office, right? And the reason I speak with some confidence about this is where I came from prior to being a school treasurer. It was in the private industry investment analysis. So there, if you look in section, 134 of the revised code for public monies and our policy, there's reference there. We are so regimented about what we can purchase. Just really quickly is we can buy US treasuries and some debt. We can buy some commercial paper. That's it. Nothing else. I cannot buy anything else. I can buy some certificates of deposit or CDARS, which is a little bit of a hybrid product with banks, and then I can invest in Star Ohio, which Star Ohio, through the treasurer's office, buys the same things that we do. We hire an active manager to help schedule those things out for a couple reasons. And that's Red Tree, Ryan Nelson from Red Tree. We've used him, and here's why. He knows that marketplace better than I do. And there's a tiered income fee schedule from 1 or 2 basis points to 3 basis points or whatever, which is 0.001, 0.003. So it's a tiered relationship of fee structure. And we can invest with him, as you've seen on the reconciliation finance reports, anywhere from 0 to $70 million. And we take that cash management perspective very seriously. We invest those dollars in those safe instruments every month to gain value. And then, through my evaluation and annually, I report back what those earnings were. As you can imagine, bank earnings right now with interest rate next to nothing, we're not earning anything in the bank in our cash. We're not earning anything short term. So you can imagine we change the yield curve and invest between 1 and 3 years according to where those yield curves are. That's the only timing that we ever do. We don't ever time with other investment vehicles. So just planting the seed, I'd like to probably proceed on that sometime in January and push that to legal and policy sometime in January, early February. So take a look at that. Give me a call, email. I'll detail that in a little bit more detail. But I want to be respectful of folks' time here tonight because we've been going for a while. Any questions on the investment policy? All right, let me look back to our agenda.
Ryan, did you say
Yes.
there's an attachment in the board docs for that? Because I don't have one.
Under 3.02, have you logged on
Yeah, I have it pulled up right now, but there's nothing.
Yeah, Ryan. There wasn't one for the Neola stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll make sure that the Neola one gets pushed out there. We have
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I will. Sorry about that. Okay, that's it for the agenda. I know we do have the equity and transparency and spending unit level analysis. I, like you, want to get back to some normalcy. And that's fun work for me, to be able to disaggregate some data and help tell the financial story. So I'm kind of making that declaration and pledge back to you that that over this holiday in transition and taking advantage now that the General Assembly is going to go home and the lame ducks scenario is going to go home, that I really do want to get back to what that equity and transparency detailed data looks like. So be thinking about, if you had comments now, throw them out, but be thinking about over the next few weeks and into the first of the year, what are those items that you want to look at? We did start to look at some high school spending. We did start to look at per pupil expenses and kind of weighted maturity in more seasoned teachers in one cluster versus another. So I can continue on that track, do a complete wide cluster assessment, but I will turn that over to you guys.
Hey, Ryan. I was going to say. So the one thing, and I know for a while there we had gone to meeting twice a month as opposed to once a month. I would like us to get back to doing that once we get into the new year, and I like to do, and I like to use that other meeting, and that other meeting, that second meeting a month, would just be focused on the equity and transparency piece around spending and unit level analysis. That way, we're not trying to, because it's too much to try to put it in this meeting. I think it's one of those things where if we're really gonna have meaningful conversation about it, I think it makes sense, at least in the short term, to schedule a second meeting per month that is only that topic, which allows it the proper, airing, if you will. And then the other point, at least for my part, and I'll defer to Ms. Autry in part on this as well. I'll give some other thought to other items that we can kind of talk about. I will say that one thing that jumped in my mind, and I've been thinking about quite a bit, is the component of the equity piece that was related to what we spend on faculty, right? So more senior staff, costs more, right? And so the long-standing rationale has been a teacher with more experience is a better teacher. Right now, again, that's an oversimplification, of course, but that's part of the underlying rationale behind you get paid more for each year of experience you have, right?
Right.
If we thought, if for a minute, as a general rule, we thought new teachers were better teachers than older teachers, the pay scales would not be, set the way they are, right? So having said that, though, I guess where my mind goes is, and this is where I think this maybe intersects with instructional policy a bit, to talk through, maybe even legal policy and contract at some point, just to start to think about, are there out of the box ways that we can incentivize folks, our teachers that are the more experienced and or the better teachers, however we are measuring or doing better, how do we get those teachers with the students who are the most in need, right? So you look at Bookdoor, you look at Elliott, you look at the disparity there in average tenure. And it just makes absolutely no sense, right? I mean, you look at Bookdoor, you say, well, a lot of our needed students are at Bookdoor, but yet on paper, the most senior experienced teachers are not at Bookdoor, right? So, and that on its face is inherently inequitable, right? Pay aside. So to me, that's one of the major things that I know that I want to talk about in 2021. And I know that's a whole big can of worms, and it's going to involve a lot of moving parts. But that's one thing that if we don't at least start that conversation in 2021, ahead of the new round of negotiations, I think that we'd be doing all of us and our students a real disservice.
Yeah, I understand that is sometimes a whole big can of worms or it's taboo, but I'm going to tell you directly because I've heard from legislators' mouths in testimony. This is coming. There is going to be, if a school funding formula gets passed with the majority of seats in our legislature as Republican controlled, there will be accountability measures tied to any money. I can guarantee you that this will happen. And I know you and I have talked about this. I know the superintendent and I have talked about even extending potential sign-on bonuses or areas where we can attract and retain specific areas of instructional licensure. These areas are going to happen. I'd rather be on the front end of those conversations than the back end of them.
Thank you. I would agree with everything that Derek just said. And guess what? I have another can of worms. So I would like to continue to capitalize on the passion and energy that we keep seeing around sports. It seems like it's related to almost everything, that we've been discussing moving forward, and more specifically, our investments in sports facilities. And of course, personally, that means something to me, but it's just something I've also heard from the community as well. So I would like to see, some reports around our investments that we've made
right
in facilities.
As superintendent, I've talked to David. Do you want to mention just briefly kind of where we are in the life cycle, since we are, we do have the state-local partnership, and we are coming to the end of this 20-plus year era of the Facilities Commission. So there is going to have to be a discussion about a master plan in the future to include athletic facilities.
Right. We have several buildings out there that, because of our population and where we are, don't qualify for funding from the state, because we basically, according to their formula, have built the appropriate square footage for all of our elementary, our middle schools, and then the last building, the combined Kenmore Garfield High School. But after we're done with that project, we have to then look at how to finance some of the capital improvements that are going to be needed, not just for those buildings that haven't seen a state partnership funds, but also for athletic facilities. So those are some things that have been on our minds, and how we can raise the funds to be able to do that. We're trying to look at some creative ways of doing that.
So I'm going to add to our list, facilities master plan. I do believe, David, we'll have to start talking about that next year as we're nearing the end of that. When we, just to put into timeline, obviously Kenmore Garfield won't be completed for a little bit of time, but when the last encumbrance, so to speak, comes, and we know within plus or minus a few percent of what monies are going to end up in the Facilities Commission locally funded initiative pot, that's when we need to really start hitting that master plan. So I'm going to add that to our 2021 list.
I mean, and not only just the master plan moving forward, but just what's happened up to date at this point, because there's a lot of, I think, misinformation about how certain things have come to play, how things were provided, what monies it came from. Was it from the state? Was it from a grant? How was it decided? So there's a lot of misinformation. But I would like to see, what we've done up to date, as well as a master plan moving forward.
Yeah, maybe we dedicate a whole finance committee meeting to the kickoff of that master plan discussion. At the same time, we'll kind of reconcile all of the funds leading up to this date. I mean, David, when I joined, we were 6 years ago. So we're 23 years into it, 21. We're 20 plus years into this.
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, and so Ryan, obviously, and I actually I've gone past my hard stop. I'm gonna have kids running in here any minute now.
Right.
That'll
make a meeting more fun.
right. More fun in finance. You guys can watch my kids screaming at me to come play. But yeah, so obviously, so once we get that committee set, it ends up being me and Diana and Val and Patrick being that committee.
Great.
In January, we can kind of sit down and, because to your point, we're adding to a list, but obviously, we don't want to try and boil the ocean. So let's pick like 3 things, that we're going to sort of, really sort of go hard on.
Okay.
And really kind of set timelines and accountability around, hey, we're going to address these 3 things by this, and set drop dead dates. So that way we got dates to kind of hold all of us accountable.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. And then if I could sort of add one more thing, I know that we've talked about that kind of 3rd term, like summer term. So obviously, like, how that gets paid for and how we incentivize people to want to do that. Again, and this is another topic that may cross committee. Maybe, it may end up being a instructional policy and/or legal policy and contracts, and as well as being a board meeting too, right? But I definitely know that's something that I've heard Dr. James talk about before, and it's something I'm wholeheartedly 100% in agreement and in support of, and would love to. Hell, it's something something that several of us, I think, campaigned on.
Right.
For God's sake. So, trying to close those gaps. And that was prior to COVID, to closing achievement gaps in achievement. So that's one more thing I'd add to the list. But again, I know that it's almost impossible to think that you're going to accomplish all of these things in a year. So that's why, again, once we're all kind of seated in January, we'd love to kind of confer with that new committee and say, okay, let's kind of rank order, whether we do a poll or not, like let's rank order, what the group kind of sees as the top 3, and then let's set timelines around that. So that's just my philosophy on that.
No, I appreciate that. That will be helpful. Looks like Ms. Autry said the same.
Okay.
Excellent.
So
that is all I had for tonight. I will give you the outcome of some legislation over the next day or 2. I do know that we're canvassing you all for a special board meeting to kind of do the same thing, right? To line up next year. Looks like it's going to be the week of the 28th. Looks like it's lining up. I do have a conflict the evening of the 28th. Be able to call in worst case scenario, but we'll
right. I thought I saw 2 dates on there that worked for everybody. So I don't know that the meeting has to be the 28th. If you've got a conflict, we could always go with the second date, because I think there were 2 dates that we all checked yes on in the poll, and I was the last person to fill out the poll. So that's why I'm saying, that was.
I haven't looked at it since I got back today.
Okay.
So, I will look. Look at that.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, Ryan.
Hey, happy holidays to you all, and be safe and enjoy what family time you can. Zoom them, virtual hug them if you can. So I wish you all the best.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Here's to a healthy 2021, everybody.
Yeah, roger that.
You know it.
Roger that.
Second that.
All right. Take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye.